Travis Korson serves as the coordinator of the Coalition for the Common Defense, an alliance of like-minded individuals and organizations who believe that without provision for the common defense as articulated by the founders, the freedom that has allowed unprecedented opportunity and prosperity to flourish in our country would soon be imperiled. Travis, welcome to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show.
Glad to be here.
Well, we appreciate you dropping by and spending a little bit of time with us. Travis, to start out, please tell our audience a little bit about the Coalition for the Common Defense, its goals, and its mission.
Sure. Well, the Coalition was founded after the Budget Control Act of 2011 was passed, and we went into the super committee stage of the budget negotiations. For those of your listeners who aren't aware, the Budget Control Act of 2011 contains two rounds of cuts. The first round of the Budget Control Act cut $487 billion over the next 10 years from our defense budget. Mm-hmm. The second round, which as part of the sequestration mechanism, could potentially cut up to an additional $600 billion from our defense budget over the next 10 years. So the Coalition was founded in the wake of that Budget Control Act negotiations to basically try to prevent these devastating sequester cuts that would befall our soldiers. We were founded not only to promote and discuss the national security implications of these cuts, but also to try and counteract the message out there that by cutting defense we will save our economy, by contributing to reducing the debt. And one of the studies that the Coalition has helped produce and that I authored over at the Center for Security Policy, our Defense Breakdown State Economic Impact reports clearly showed that that by cutting the defense spending, it would actually have an adverse effect on our economy.
Well, and Travis, some of these cuts, in my opinion, are extremely alarming. For instance, the cuts would be devastating to the point that it would result in the smallest Army since 1940, the smallest Navy since 1915, and the smallest Air Force in our history. Could you talk a little bit about that?
That's correct. And the 200,000 soldiers that they're actually discussing would leave us with the smallest ground force since 1940. Mm-hmm. Now, what's interesting about these sequester cuts is that they come at a time where the Department of Defense is pushing this new air-sea concept as mm-hmm. part of this pivot to Asia, where they're looking to have a greater influence in Asia. So by having these sequester cuts and like you said, having the smallest Navy since 1915, the smallest Air Force in its history, it clearly undermines that concept that they hope to push.
Mm-hmm. Now, the House of Representatives has acted on legislation that would starve off these budget restrictions and their intended impact, at least for a year. But the Senate has yet to act. And Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid and President Obama insist that any such relief must be accompanied by their favorite things, tax increases. Could you talk a little bit about that?
That's correct. And this is just a clear example of Majority Leader Reid and President Obama playing politics with our military and putting our soldiers in harm's way through these political means. Actually, just today, Senator Reid responded to a letter from House Armed Services Chairman Buck McKeon asking mm-hmm. him to act one of the several proposals that the House has proposed, or conversely, there is a similar piece of legislation in the Senate, also called the Down Payment to Protect National Security Act, that was introduced by Senator Kyle, which also could stave off these sequestration cuts for a year. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, without any sort of tax increase, they refuse to act. Senator Reid this is just another example of the obstructionist Senate. And with President Obama, it's just another example of him being more of a campaigner-in-chief than a commander-in-chief.
Right. Now, Travis, the Coalition is using a couple of very interesting tools. And recently, the Coalition for Common Defense released an ad titled Next Fiscal Year. Could you tell our audience about that ad?
Sure. Well, that ad actually marks, that's the first ad in a series of ads that we plan to launch regarding these sequestration issues. The ad can be found in two places, both at our website, which is www.forthecommoddefense.org, and it's right on the main page. And it can be also found on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/forthecommoddefense. And basically, what we wanted to do is in kind of a satirical, fun way, I guess as fun as you could say, but more of a satirical, tongue-in-cheek way is a better way of putting it, kind of show the absurdity of these 20% across-the-board defense cuts and what they might mean. So you have a soldier in a combat situation, and you have a bureaucrat dispatched under the auspices of the Obama administration in the field with him and basically putting him in danger in a combat situation. I won't give away the punchline to your viewers because I encourage them to go.
Well, if they were viewers, they could see it. Other than
I'm sorry, your listeners. But that's only a short minute ad, and we hope to roll out a few of them in conjunction with a letter writing campaign to the Senate and White House, telling them to act on sequestration.
Well, it is Friday the 13th, and we've been trying to upload this on our website. We are going to try to continue to do that, but it must be Friday 13th. We've had a couple other technical issues today. But Travis on the other end of the line is my friend and co-host, Anna Little. Anna, do you have any questions for Travis Korson?
Well, Travis, I'm always interested to know what we the people can do to make things better. And, I would hate to think that just having this administration in the White House, that we the people would be somehow unable to address these issues. There has to be something we can do. So to that end, my question to you is, do you think that if we the people stand up in 2012 and take action and regain the Senate with those 4 seats we need in order to get control of the Senate, that's all we need. If we do that, do things change in your perspective?
I certainly think so. Senator Reid, in the position of majority leader, yields a considerable amount of control over what is allowed to be, what they can bring to the floor in the Senate to vote on and debate, and what they can't. Republicans have certainly taken the lead on rolling back sequestration, making sure America has the tools necessary to defend our country. By taking the Senate back in 2012. In theory, you would have a much more sympathetic group of legislators and, at the very least, a less obstructionist leader who would allow some of these proposals that have come out of the House to see the light of day, to get debated and voted on, and ultimately wind up on the desk of the Commander-in-Chief.
Follow up, Anna?
Well, I believe it's very, very important that we do focus on what we the people can do. So I'm going to ask you another question. Regaining the Senate and holding the House, defending our majority in the House, and ensuring that conservatives are increased in the House. What influence do we have as we go forward as far as making legislation that can undo the damage? You see, I know that what's already happened financially by way of a budget cannot be reversed in that budget cycle. A budget is a budget. What can we the people do to try to avoid that kind of damage in the future, and what should we be asking our representatives to do to try to reverse the damage in future budgets?
Sure. Well, there actually is a budget that was voted out of the House. The Paul Ryan budget actually averts sequestration to defense, maintains the integrity of our other spending systems, and puts us on track to eliminate the deficit. Once again, it's another example of Harry Reid and the Democrats in the Senate refusing to even consider the budget. I mean, you're talking about a chamber that hasn't passed a budget in 5 years. Clearly, that obstructionist roadblock needs to be taken care of. We the people out there, when you're considering what to do, I think one of the most important things you can do is contact your legislators here and now and let them know this is an important issue. This is something that needs to be resolved. As I was saying earlier, part of the campaign that the coalition has launched includes a letter writing campaign. If you go to action.forthecommoddefense.org, you will find a petition there that goes to the Senate and the White House asking them to take action on these issues to avert sequestration. Going forward, especially when individuals go to the ballot box in November. I think what's important to consider is their standpoints on sequestration, their standpoints on how to eliminate the deficit, because you could cut defense spending to you could zero it out for this year, and we would still have a $500 billion deficit. Clearly, defense spending is not the driver of this deficit. It's our entitlements which need to be reined in and under control, and it's some of these big government programs. So, what you need to look for are individuals that are aware of our constitutional requirement to promote the national defense.
You know, Travis, Frank Gaffney, who is a frequent visitor here on the Conservative Commandos radio show and also a member of the Coalition for the Common Defense, remarked, defense has already paid its fair share into deficit reduction, and we cannot safely and responsibly try to balance the budget on the backs of our men and women in uniform. And he also says the president and Senate leaders may be jeopardizing not only their mission, but their lives. I think that is extremely important for our listeners out there to know.
That's correct, and I think when you talk about defense paying their fair share, I think one of the most striking facts is that even though defense is only 20% of the federal budget, it has taken 50% of the deficit reduction efforts to date.
That's incredible.
There's only so much you can cut. Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta, Obama's Secretary of Defense, has said these sequestration cuts would be like cutting the bone. They would be like pulling the trigger, putting a gun to our head, and pulling the trigger. So clearly, there is very little support for these cuts.
Well, Travis Korson, coordinator for the Coalition for Common Defense, I want to thank you so much for joining us today on the Conservative Commandos radio show. Like I said, when I get our Friday the 13th gremlins out of the way, we will be posting your video on our website, www.conservativecommandosradioshow.com. But in the meantime, please give us your website and where people can go and see the video now.
Sure, that was forthecommondefense.org.
forthecommondefense.org. Again, Travis Korson, thank you so much for joining us on the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Glad to be here.